It was a picture-perfect beach day, with everyone basking in the sun and enjoying the calm, relaxing atmosphere as the ocean stretched calmly toward the horizon. However, beneath the serene surface, a shark lurked, its presence undetected. The peaceful scene changes in an instant when the shark decides to strike. What happened next? Join us as we recount the events that turned a calm day into chaos. The California coastline basked under the afternoon sun, casting golden light over the beach. The Pacific stretched endlessly, its waters shimmering beneath a clear sky, while the air carried the scent of salt and warmth, marking the perfect summer day. Families lounged on the sand, blankets scattered with towels, coolers, and toys. Children darted in and out of the surf, their laughter blending with the rhythmic sound of the waves, while parents read or sunbathed, enjoying the peaceful atmosphere. The Stewart family was no different. 8-year-old Matthew waded through the shallows only a few feet away from his father, Peter, who stood watch in the ankle-deep water. Nearby, Ellen helped their younger daughter, Beth, craft a sandcastle. It was a scene of simple joy, reflected all along the beach as other families basked in the exact carefree moment. Yet, beneath the surface, the ocean concealed a predator. A juvenile great white shark nearly 10 feet long silently patrolled the waters. Though not as large as the full-grown sharks that roamed offshore, it was still a formidable force. Drawn toward the bustling beachgoers, the shark moved stealthily, hidden in the darker patches of water as it neared the shallows. Lifeguards scanned the horizon from their posts, unaware of the lurking danger. The shark remained unseen, its presence no more than a ripple beneath the waves. Peter smiled at his son as Matthew splashed in the water, his joy a perfect reflection of the day's tranquility. But that peace was shattered in an instant. From his elevated perch, a lifeguard noticed something odd, a shadow moving swiftly beneath the water. At first he hesitated, thinking it might be a dolphin or large fish, but the speed of the creature revealed the truth. He reached for his whistle just as the water erupted in chaos. Matthew felt a sudden force pull him under. Peter turned, hearing his son's startled gasp as Matthew vanished beneath the surface. Ellen's eyes snapped up from the sandcastle, her joy shifting to horror in a heartbeat. Screams erupted from the shore as people pointed toward the water, the realization of what was happening spreading like wildfire. The beach, which had moments earlier been filled with laughter and chatter, was now consumed by panic. People scrambled out of the water, crashing into each other in their desperate attempts to reach safety. The lifeguards were already sprinting toward the scene, their whistles shrill, trying to maintain order in the growing chaos. Peter, his instincts overtaking any sense of fear, lunged forward into the surf, his eyes scanning the now churning water for any sign of his son. He plunged his hands into the waves, groping blindly against the pull of the ocean, calling Matthew's name over and over. Finally, after what felt like an eternity but had been only seconds, he felt something beneath his fingers. He grabbed hold, pulling with all his strength, and up from the water came his son, gasping for breath, blood staining the water around them. The juvenile great white had released Matthew after the initial bite, more confused than committed to its attack. The boy's tiny body had been enough to trigger its predatory instincts, but not sufficient to sustain its interest. Still, the damage had been done. Matthew's leg was torn open, the flesh ragged where the shark's teeth had latched on. The lifeguards reached them within moments, pulling both father and son to shore with practiced efficiency. The beach was now a scene of controlled pandemonium. People crowded around in shocked horror, kept at bay by other lifeguards trying to clear space. Ellen rushed to her son's side, her hands shaking as she tried to keep pressure on the wound. Her panic kept in check by sheer maternal determination. Peter knelt beside her, his face pale but focused, his mind racing through 1,000 thoughts. Had they gotten there in time? Was Matthew going to survive this? The lifeguards worked quickly, applying tourniquets and calling for an ambulance. The steady thrum of a helicopter could be heard in the distance, a sign that help was on its way. The crowd that had once been scattered along the beach now gathered at a distance, their faces a mix of horror and sympathy. Parents clutched their children a little tighter. Some of them had already fled the scene, unwilling to let their kids witness the aftermath of the attack. The day had turned dark in an instant. the joy of the sun and sea now tainted by the stark reality of nature's unpredictability. As the paramedics arrived and loaded Matthew onto the stretcher, his tiny body still and pale, the entire beach seemed to hold its breath. Peter and Ellen followed closely, their minds numb, their hearts beating with the same question: would their son survive? The beach, once a place of peace, had transformed into a landscape of fear, a reminder that the ocean, for all its beauty, harbored dangers that could strike without warning. In the days that followed, the attack made several headlines. As time goes on, the beach reopens, and the terror of the moment slowly fading into memory for all but the Stewart family. David had always sought adventure in the depths of the ocean, where silence and serenity intertwined with the occasional brush of danger. A seasoned scuba diver, he had spent years exploring the underwater realms. He knew the ocean's beauty as well as its unpredictability, which is why he was both excited and cautious about this trip. It was meant to be a bonding experience with his teenage son, a chance to introduce him to the wonders of the ocean beyond its surface. They had chosen the coast of Belize for this particular journey, a diver's paradise renowned for its vibrant coral reefs, teeming marine life, and clear, inviting waters. The day was perfect for a dive. The morning sun bathed the shoreline in a warm golden hue, and the waves lapped gently at the boat. After a brief run-through of the day's dive plan, they descended into the vast blue, their bodies quickly becoming mere silhouettes against the shimmering surface above. David could feel the excitement in his son's movements as they swam side by side, gliding through the water, weightless and free. The world beneath the waves was a kaleidoscope of color, the coral reef bursting with life, schools of vibrant fish, undulating sea fans, and darting crustaceans. It was as if they had been transported into another world, one untouched by the chaos of the one above. They had ventured beyond the crowded areas frequented by other divers, lured by the tranquility and mystery of the open sea. Their guide had kept a steady distance, giving them room to explore while staying within a reasonable range. David felt confident. He had been diving in waters like these for years, and despite its reputation for occasional shark sightings, he knew Belize's reef sharks to be largely indifferent to human presence. The descent was smooth and the visibility was extraordinary. They swam deeper, exploring crevices and formations, spotting creatures that David had hoped his son would remember for a lifetime. As they neared a patch of coral, David noticed a faint shadow in his peripheral vision, drifting slowly in their direction. A reef shark, a large one, emerged from the darkness of the ocean, moving with the effortless grace of a predator that knew its domain. David's heart quickened, but he didn't panic. He had seen reef sharks before, and they were known for their disinterest in divers, usually swimming away if they got too close. The shark glided past them, seemingly uninterested, continuing on its path as if they were just another part of the scenery. David kept an eye on it, watching as it drifted farther away before signaling to his son that it was time to swim back toward the boat. The encounter had been a reminder of the ocean's raw power and danger, but David felt reassured. Everything seemed under control. They began their slow ascent, the shark now a distant memory. David checked his dive computer, ensuring they had enough air for a calm and safe return. The rhythmic motion of their fins cutting through the water was soothing, a signal that the dive had been a success. But as they neared a slight drop-off along the edge of the reef, something shifted. The same shark that had passed them moments ago reappeared, this time closer, too close. There was no time to react before it lunged. In a flash of movement, the shark charged toward David with terrifying speed, its mighty jaws clamping down on his arm. Pain exploded through him, unlike anything he had ever experienced. The force of the bite was immense, bone-crushing and instantly disabling. Blood clouded the water around him, turning the serene blue into a murky red. His instincts took over. Despite the agony, David's training kicked in. He managed to shake free from the shark's grasp, using his uninjured arm to push himself away, though the beast circled back as if considering another attack. Through the haze of pain and panic, David signaled to his son, "Go, now." His son hesitated for a second, frozen by shock, but David repeated the signal, urgent and sharp. The boy turned and began to swim toward the boat, his strokes frantic and desperate. David remained behind, fighting to keep calm and focused. The shark had retreated for now, but the damage had been done. He clutched his injured arm, trying to stem the flow of blood, but the injury was severe. Tendons and flesh ripped apart, the sensation of water rushing over exposed bone making his head spin. His strength was waning, the loss of blood making it harder to stay conscious. He could see his son's figure growing smaller in the distance, nearing the boat, safety just within reach. Relief mingled with dread in David's mind. His son would make it, but David knew his chances were fading with every second. The underwater world that had once felt so familiar, so welcoming, now seemed to press down on him with an unforgiving weight. David fought to stay afloat, both physically and mentally. The surface of the water was tantalizingly close, just a few dozen feet above him, but it might as well have been miles. He kicked feebly, trying to move upward, but his body was sluggish, his vision blurring. The once clear waters around him now seemed thick and murky with blood and fear. His breaths were shallow, his air tank running low. He was dimly aware of movement above him, the shadow of the boat, the splash of feet kicking toward him. But his mind was slipping, the cold embrace of the ocean pulling him deeper. The pain had receded into a distant throb, replaced by a numbing exhaustion. He thought of his son, his face, the excitement in his eyes when they had first plunged into the water together. He had wanted to share this world with him, to create a memory that would last forever. In a way he had, though not in the way he had hoped. By the time the rescuers reached him, the ocean had already claimed David. They pulled his lifeless body from the water, his face pale beneath the mask, the once vibrant coral reef now a grim backdrop to the tragedy. His son sat on the boat, wrapped in a towel, his eyes wide and hollow, struggling to comprehend the weight of what had just happened. The dive trip, meant for bonding and discovery, had ended in the cruelest way possible. The ocean, beautiful and indifferent, had taken another life. The sun shimmered off the turquoise waters of the Bahamian Cove, a perfect reflection of the cloudless sky above. The group of 6 friends had spent the past few hours reveling in the freedom of the open sea, toasting champagne flutes to Nicole, the bride-to-be. Laughter echoed from the deck of the rented party boat, the soft strains of music mingling with the distant cry of seagulls. For Nicole, this trip was the culmination of months of wedding planning, a brief escape before the whirlwind of her big day. Her closest friends surrounded her. Aaron, her maid of honor and college roommate. Ava, the free spirit of the group who insisted on renting the boat. Melissa, the quiet observer. Katie, the organizer, always one step ahead. And Julia, Nicole's older sister, the calming influence who had always looked out for her. They had anchored in a secluded cove far from the tourist boats, secluded and serene, feeling like they had found their slice of paradise. The boat swayed gently with the waves as they spent the day sunbathing, sipping cocktails, and occasionally diving off the side to cool off in the warm, crystalline water. As the afternoon wore on, the mood became more relaxed, each woman basking in the glow of sun and friendship. Erin floated lazily on her back, staring up at the sky when she noticed something off in the water. At first, it was just a shadow, dark and indistinct, slowly circling beneath the surface about 30 yards from the boat. She blinked, unsure if her sun-dazed eyes were playing tricks on her. But the shadow moved closer, larger and more defined with each passing moment. She decided to break the silence by calling the attention of others. The others glanced over, following her gaze. The shadow was unmistakable now, cutting through the water with purpose. Ava, who had been swimming a short distance from the boat, noticed it as well, her playful splashing coming to an abrupt halt. A collective chill settled over the group as they realized what they were seeing. It was a bull shark. Massive, nearly 10 feet long, with a thick, muscular body gliding ominously beneath the water's surface. They had all heard stories about the aggressive nature of bull sharks, who are known to frequent shallow waters and are capable of unpredictable behavior. Panic started to creep in, though no one said it out loud. Katie called on Ava to get into the boat back, and she nodded, pushing toward the ladder. Her movements were swift and deliberate. She reached for the lowest rung just as the shark, as if sensing the sudden commotion, veered closer. The boat seemed too far away for comfort, and the water, which had moments before felt so welcoming, now felt like an abyss of danger. Suddenly, before anyone could react, the shark surged upward with terrifying speed, breaching the surface in a violent display of power. It was on Ava before she could pull herself entirely out of the water, its jaws clamping down on her leg, with a force that sent a shockwave of horror through the group. The water exploded in a swirl of blood, thrashing limbs and desperate screams. Ava's scream pierced the air, a sound that would forever echo in her friends' memories. Julia and Aaron lunged forward, grabbing Ava's arms and pulling with all their strength to get her back onto the boat. Katie and Nicole froze in shock, their eyes wide with disbelief, while Melissa stumbled back, her hands covering her mouth, unable to process the terror unfolding in front of her. The shark's hold on Ava was unrelenting. Every pull from her friends was met with a counterforce as the beast yanked her downward, determined not to release its grip. The frenzy of water and blood painted a macabre scene against the once idyllic backdrop of the cove. Julia, muscles straining, managed to get Ava halfway out of the water, her face pale and contorted in agony. Blood streamed from her leg where the shark's teeth had sunk deep into her flesh. Ava's breaths were coming in ragged gasps, her body convulsing from the shock. Aaron held on tightly, tears streaming down her face, screaming for someone to help, but there was no one else, just the six of them, isolated in a cove where no one could hear their cries. The shark thrashed again, pulling harder, nearly jerking Ava back into the water. Time seemed to slow as Nicole, snapping out of her daze, lunged forward with a desperate scream. She grabbed hold of Ava's other arm, adding her weight to the effort. The strain on the women's faces was evident, every muscle working to save their friend. With a sudden sickening tear, the shark's grip slipped. It had released Ava, but not without leaving a horrific wound. Blood poured from the gash in her leg, her skin shredded from the powerful jaws. The force of the final tug sent the group crashing backward onto the deck, Ava landing in a crumpled heap, her body limp, her face twisted in shock and pain. For a moment, there was only the sound of labored breathing, the lapping of water against the boat, and the soft groan of the deck beneath their weight. But the tranquility had been shattered, replaced with the horrifying reality of what had just happened. Julia grabbed a towel, pressing it against Ava's leg in a frantic attempt to stop the bleeding. In a bid to find help, Melissa scrambled to the cockpit, fumbling with the radio, her hands shaking uncontrollably. The others worked in silence, each in a state of shock but aware that time was slipping away. The once carefree party boat was now stained with blood, the air thick with the scent of salt, fear, and desperation. The radio crackled to life as Melissa frantically called for assistance. She repeated the call over and over, her voice growing hoarse, her words nearly lost in the panic. Minutes stretched into eternity as they waited for a response, the weight of helplessness pressing down on them. Ava lay motionless, her breathing shallow, as Julia applied pressure to the wound, trying to keep her conscious. The shock had set in quickly, and the fear of losing her was all too real. Finally, the radio responded. Help was on the way, but the damage had already been done. The joyous celebration they had planned was now a nightmare, one that would follow them long after they returned to shore. The friends sat in silence, holding Ava's hand, whispering words of comfort that barely masked the horror they all felt. The water, once so inviting, now felt like a predator lurking just beneath the surface. They were forever changed, bound not by the memories of celebration, but by the shared trauma of that day in the cove. The late afternoon sun cast a golden glow over the waters off the South African coast, where Alex, an experienced and adventurous kite surfer, was riding the ocean breeze. The wind was perfect, solid yet steady, pushing him across the surf with a speed that made his heart race in exhilaration. He had spent countless hours chasing that rush, carving through the water and launching into the air with the pull of his kite. This stretch of ocean was familiar to him, but each session still felt like a new adventure, a new test of skill, and a new opportunity to push his limits. Today was no different. The waves were powerful but manageable, their rhythmic rises and falls blending into the soundtrack of crashing surf and the whistling of the wind through his kite lines. Alex expertly maneuvered his board, shifting his weight and adjusting the kite to catch the wind just right. The thrill was intoxicating, the kind of high that only came when he was soaring above the water, suspended between sky and sea, untethered from the world below. As he caught a powerful gust, Alex felt his kite pull sharply, and his board lifted from the water, launching him high into the air. For a few breathless seconds, he was flying, gliding effortlessly above the surface. He reveled in the weightlessness, the sensation of freedom as he looked down at the vast expanse of the ocean beneath him. The coastline stretched out in the distance, a jagged line against the horizon, but his eyes were drawn to the water below. That's when he saw it. A dark shape, massive and unmistakable, was moving just beneath the surface, cutting through the water with silent, lethal grace. His heart skipped a beat. Even from the height he was at, there was no mistaking what it was. A great white shark, easily over 15 feet long, its pale underbelly and pointed snout clearly visible as it glided beneath him. Time seemed to slow as Alex processed what he was seeing. He had encountered sharks before during his many sessions out on the water, but none like this. None so large, so ominously close. A chill ran down his spine as he realized the shark wasn't simply passing by. It was tracking him, drawn by the motion of his board and the commotion of his movements on the surface. He was still airborne when the fear hit him, a primal, gut-wrenching terror that cut through the adrenaline. His heart pounded in his chest and his mind raced, scrambling for options. But before he could fully react, gravity took hold, and he began his descent back toward the water. He adjusted his kite, trying to angle his landing away from the shark's path, but there was no avoiding it. He was coming down right into the predator's hunting ground. The impact of the landing jarred him, water spraying up around him as his board sliced back into the waves. For a split second, everything seemed normal. The wind tugged at his kite, the board skimmed the surface, and he tried to regain his rhythm. But then the water around him surged, and before he could register what was happening, a massive force struck from below. The great white breached with terrifying speed and power, its jaws wide and teeth glistening in the sunlight. Alex barely had time to react as the shark slammed into him, its mouth clamping down on his leg with crushing force. The pain was immediate and blinding, like a hot iron being driven into his flesh. The sheer power of the bite knocked him off his board and into the water, the ocean suddenly transforming from his playground to a nightmare. Instinct took over as Alex thrashed in the water, kicking and struggling to free himself from the shark's grip. His leg was on fire, and he could feel the weight of the predator pulling him down, dragging him deeper into the cold, dark water. Desperation fueled his movements, his mind a haze of pain and fear as he fought for his life. In the chaos, Alex's hand found the lines of his kite rigging, and without thinking, he yanked on them, whipping the lines toward the shark in a frantic attempt to fend it off. The lines slashed through the water, striking the shark across its nose and gills. Whether by instinct or surprise, the shark recoiled, loosening its grip just enough for Alex to break free. Blood clouded the water around Alex's shredded leg, staining the sea a deep red. His vision blurred from the pain, but he knew the shark wasn't gone. It circled beneath the surface, preparing for another attack. Alex felt its presence, its hunger. Kicking with his good leg, he used his arms to stay afloat, but exhaustion and the searing pain threatened to overwhelm him. His partially inflated kite acted as a lifeline, slowly dragging him away from the attack. But it wasn't fast enough. The current pulled him back toward the shark, and every moment felt like a countdown. The vast ocean suddenly closed in, claustrophobic and menacing. Just as Alex's strength began to falter, he heard the sound of an engine, a boat cutting through the waves. He turned his head, eyes struggling to focus through the pain, and saw a small fishing vessel speeding toward him. The crew had seen the attack and rushed to rescue him. Relief washed over him, but danger remained. The shark made another pass beneath him, its dorsal fin slicing through the water just feet away. Summoning his last bit of strength, Alex kicked and thrashed, trying to keep the predator at bay. But his movement slowed as blood loss and exhaustion set in. The boat neared, and strong hands reached down, pulling him from the water just as the shark lunged, its jaws snapping where Alex had been seconds before. Collapsed on the deck, gasping for breath, Alex stared at his mangled leg. The pain was unbearable, but he had survived. The shark circled once before disappearing into the depths. As the boat sped to shore, Alex lay staring at the sky, his once thrilling sport now a fight for survival. His leg and his life would never be the same. The sky was an endless blue, its reflection on the glassy surface of the lake creating an illusion of infinite space. The Stevens family had chosen this quiet spot near the Florida coastline for a relaxing Saturday picnic, a brief escape from their usual routines. The day was perfect, sunny with a gentle breeze coming off the nearby ocean, enough to cool the warmth radiating from the sand. The lake was secluded, separated from the ocean by a narrow strip of land and a few channels that occasionally allowed ocean water to trickle in, creating a saltier mix than usual for a freshwater body. It was beautiful and peaceful, the perfect place for a family to unwind. The family had spent the morning unpacking sandwiches, spreading out blankets, and watching the kids play by the water's edge. The sounds of laughter and idle conversation filled the air as seagulls floated lazily overhead. The serene setting masked the potential danger lurking just beyond the horizon, and it was hard to imagine anything threatening the idyllic day. Mia, the oldest of the three Stevens children at 17, had always been the adventurous one. After a few hours of lounging around and dipping her toes in the lake, she decided she needed something more exhilarating. A narrow sandbar caught her eye, a small, isolated strip of land a short paddle away from the shore. The distance seemed manageable, and she had kayaked plenty of times before. Without much thought, Mia grabbed the lightweight kayak and slid it into the water, announcing casually to her parents that she was headed for the sandbar. Her mother, Karen, had glanced up from the book she was reading, but saw no reason to be alarmed. The lake was calm, and Mia had always been a strong swimmer. John, her father, gave a thumbs up from his spot by the picnic blanket, distracted by keeping an eye on his younger son, Tommy. The family was used to Mia's sense of independence. It had always been a part of her personality. As Mia paddled away, the tranquility of the scene remained unbroken. The kayak cut smoothly through the water, each stroke rhythmic, the soft splash blending with the distant hum of the ocean waves. From the shore, Mia's parents and siblings occasionally looked up to check on her progress. She moved effortlessly, reaching the sandbar within minutes. Once there, Mia pulled the kayak onto the narrow strip of land and stood for a moment, enjoying the isolation and the feeling of being surrounded by water on all sides. The horizon stretched out before her, vast and empty. After a short break, she decided it was time to head back. The late afternoon sun was casting longer shadows, and Mia didn't want to miss the rest of the picnic. She pushed the kayak back into the water and began paddling toward shore, her strokes solid and confident. But as she moved farther from the sandbar, the water beneath her started to shift in an almost invisible way. Unbeknownst to Mia, something had been disturbed, something that had wandered in from the nearby ocean. A bull shark, drawn in by the channels connecting the lake to the sea, had been cruising through the murky depths. Unlike the open waters of the ocean, the lake was narrower and more confined. The shark was not accustomed to such an environment, but its predatory instincts were sharp, and it was on the hunt. The movement of Mia's kayak, unusual and foreign in its territory, piqued the shark's interest. It moved with purpose, its sleek body cutting through the water toward the kayak, curious but increasingly aggressive as it closed in on what it perceived as prey. Mia felt a slight bump against the bottom of the kayak, a sudden jolt that made her pause mid-paddle. For a moment she thought it might have been a submerged log or debris, but before she could process the thought, the kayak lurched violently to one side. The world flipped in an instant, and she was plunged into the cold water, her breath catching in her throat as she struggled to orient herself. The kayak bobbed uselessly beside her, and panic began to rise in her chest. She kicked to the surface and gasped for air, looking around wildly. That's when she saw it, a dark shadow moving just beneath the surface. Mia screamed, instinctively thrashing in the water, but the motion only attracted the shark's attention further. It moved in with terrifying speed, its jaws closing around her left arm in a crushing grip. Pain shot through her body as she screamed again, louder this time, desperate for help. On shore, her father, John, had already stood up the moment he heard the splash. At first, he hadn't registered the danger, but as Mia's screams reached him, a cold realization hit him like a wave. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. Without hesitation, he sprinted toward the water, diving in and swimming as fast as he could toward his daughter. The scene was chaotic. Mia was fighting to keep her head above water, her arm bleeding profusely as the shark thrashed and tugged at her. The kayak floated nearby, overturned and useless. John swam harder than he ever had before, the adrenaline coursing through his veins, making him move faster than he thought possible. Reaching Mia, he grabbed her uninjured arm and pulled her toward him with all his strength. The shark, momentarily confused by the new flurry of activity, released its grip on Mia's arm, disappearing back into the depths as quickly as it had appeared. John dragged Mia back to shore, her arm limp and bloodied. Karen was already running toward them, shouting for help, while Tommy and his younger sister stood frozen in shock. As soon as they reached land, John and Karen acted quickly, using a beach towel to apply pressure to Mia's wound, trying desperately to stem the bleeding. Mia was pale, her breathing shallow but conscious. Tears streamed down her face, not just from the pain but from the shock of what had happened. Her family surrounded her, their earlier joy and relaxation shattered by the violence of the attack. In the aftermath, the scene became a flurry of activity. Emergency services arrived, taking over the task of stabilizing Mia as she was loaded into an ambulance. The picnic that had begun as a peaceful family outing was now a horror-filled memory, stained with fear and blood. The once serene lake seemed ominous, its calm surface hiding the lurking dangers that had forever altered their lives. The Stevens family will never forget that day, a day that started with laughter and ended with Mia's life hanging in the balance. The morning sky over California's coast was painted in soft hues of pink and orange as the sun climbed above the horizon. Waves lazily rolled toward the shore, their soft hum filling the air while an excited crowd lined the beach. It was the day of the state's premier surfing competition, and hundreds of spectators had gathered to watch some of the world's best surfers take on the challenging Pacific swells. The water shimmered, its cool, salty expanse both enticing and daunting. The surfers were in position, poised on their boards, scanning the horizon for the next big set to roll in. Dozens of competitors floated out beyond the breaking waves, their expressions a combination of calm and focus. Each surfer sat, slightly hunched over, letting the ocean buoy them gently up and down. The camaraderie among them was palpable. Many had known each other for years, having competed in countless events together. They exchanged quick nods and smiles, but the anticipation for the perfect wave kept most of them silent, their minds sharp and ready for action. Farther out, gulls circled lazily, their calls echoing over the water. Boats with lifeguards and event officials lingered beyond the surfers, vigilant but relaxed, ready to act if anyone found themselves in trouble. The waves were mild for the time being, not quite the monsters everyone was hoping for, but the forecast promised something bigger soon. The first hint of trouble came when one of the surfers, a seasoned professional from Australia, squinted at the water. He had been overseeing the surface, searching for signs of an oncoming swell, when he noticed something else. A dark shadow moving beneath the water, slow but deliberate. He blinked, thinking it might be a trick of the light or a harmless fish passing below. But then the shadow broke the surface, and there it was, a sleek, unmistakable dorsal fin. At first he didn't react. He wasn't new to the ocean, and surfers frequently shared the water with marine life. He glanced around, seeing if anyone else had noticed. A few other competitors caught his eye, their brows furrowed in curiosity more than concern. The fin was distant, perhaps 100 yards out, and it moved almost lazily, not in the erratic manner that would usually signal danger. But something about its size gave the surfer pause. This wasn't a playful dolphin, nor was it a harmless ray. As the fin dipped below the surface again, the Australian's heartbeat quickened, and he felt the prickle of unease crawling up his spine. Minutes passed, and the competitors began to shift uneasily on their boards. The whispers spread among them. Had anyone else seen the fin? What was it? Dolphins? Some shrugged it off, refusing to let their nerves get the best of them. Others scanned the water intently, trying to pinpoint where the shadow might resurface. Then there it was again, this time closer. The fin glided ominously, breaking through the water in a smooth arc. A few surfers began to back paddle slowly, inching toward the shore without making any sudden movements. One of the lifeguard boats, sensing the change in the surfer's body language, revved its engine and started to edge closer, its occupants scanning the water with binoculars. Now the crowd on shore was beginning to sense that something wasn't right. Murmurs rippled through the spectators as they noticed the unusual movements of the surfers, who were no longer focused on the waves. Phones were lifted as people tried to capture what was happening. Their attention split between the ocean and the giant screen broadcasting live footage from the event. The fin appeared again, this time much closer, just within the periphery of the contestants. Its size sent a wave of realization through those who saw it clearly. It was a great white shark, its presence undeniable now. It circled once, its massive body carving slow arcs in the water, and then disappeared below the surface again. The calm focus that had defined the competition vanished, replaced by a rising tension that thickened the air. Panic began to ripple through the lineup of surfers. Some of the less experienced competitors started paddling furiously toward the shore, their arms cutting through the water in desperate strokes. Others remained frozen, their instincts telling them that sudden movements might provoke the shark. The lifeguard boats roared into action, cutting across the water in an attempt to create a barrier between the shark and the surfers. On shore, the crowd erupted into a frenzy of shouts and gasps as word spread. The announcers, initially unaware of what was happening, quickly realized the gravity of the situation and urged the surfers to stay calm. Officials scrambled to cancel the event, their voices cracking with urgency over the loudspeakers. But all eyes were fixed on the water, where the silhouette of the shark loomed large in everyone's minds, even when it wasn't visible. One by one, the surfers were corralled by the boats, their faces taut with fear and concentration. The great white was still out there, its predatory instincts evident in the way it circled, yet it had not made any direct attacks. The lifeguards kept a close watch, their eyes flicking between the remaining surfers and the area where the fin had last been seen. The minutes dragged on, and every splash and ripple in the water sent a jolt of adrenaline through the onlookers and competitors alike. But miraculously, the shark never struck. As the last surfer was pulled to safety, the great white slipped away, vanishing as silently as it had appeared. The water seemed to exhale, the immediate threat dissipating, though the tension remained thick. Back on shore, the mood was one of relief, though it was heavily laced with disbelief. No one had been hurt, but the atmosphere was charged with what could have been. The threat had been so real, so tangible, and yet it had passed by without bloodshed. Lifeguards gathered to debrief, their faces pale beneath their sunburned skin, while surfers exchanged shaky laughs and exhaled in deep, trembling breaths. The event was officially canceled. The competition, once brimming with excitement and energy, ended in an eerie quiet. As the crowd dispersed, the story began to spread. Phones buzzed with news alerts, social media exploded with shaky footage and panicked recounts, and the headlines soon dominated the evening news. Stalking shark halts surfing competition in California. For days, the world buzzed with the tale of the great white shark that circled but never attacked. Some called it a miracle, others a reminder of the ocean's untamed power. But for those who had been there, who had felt the oppressive weight of the predator's presence in the water, it would remain an experience etched into their memories, a narrow escape from nature's raw and unpredictable fury.